Hi everybody and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you've had a really good week. So in today's podcast we're going to be talking about something slightly different to the previous 4 episodes. In the previous episodes I've been talking about my new life as a digital nomad, but today I'm going to start to discuss a trip I took earlier this year with my grandpa. I'm very lucky to have had 2 brilliant grandpas in my life. I've been very close to both of them. And in today's recording, I want to discuss a little bit about my grandpas and then introduce the trip that I took with my grandpa Alan earlier this year. So today's recording is about Grandpa Alan's bucket list dream, my grandpa Alan. Before we listen to the recording today, as always, we have a question for you to answer as you listen. So today's question is, how do I describe my 2 grandpas? How are they different? And secondly, what is my grandpa Alan's bucket list dream? So what does he want to do? In today's recording, it's a difficult one today, but we have a lot of idioms and phrases that native speakers use, particularly British native speakers, that you won't find in your textbook. So listen carefully for those ones if you can. Try to think about the meanings if you know them, but if not, we will go through those phrases after the recording in the second part today. Okay, so let's get into the topic then. It's Grandpa Alan's bucket list dream. So it often seems that when babies are born, grandparents' hopes and dreams for themselves go out the window, and they put all their energy into taking care of their grandchildren, helping them achieve their dreams. As grandchildren, we only know our grandparents as old people, and they live their lives at our service. They take care of us until we grow up, and then the tables turn. How often do we really think of our grandparents as individuals who have their own lives and their own passions and their own dreams? I've been lucky, really lucky, to have 2 really fantastic sets of grandparents, each with totally unique characters, and particularly my grandpas. On my dad's side, Grandpa Ray was a no-nonsense, straight-talking man's man with a great sense of humour, and he lived for his sports, particularly football, but also cricket and horse racing. And on my mum's side, Grandpa Alan is very sensitive, caring, quite deep thinking, and he loves his nature. He enjoys gardening, fishing, bird watching, outdoor things. He also loves sports too. Although my 2 grandpas' personalities were very different, they both had one thing in common, and they were both 100% committed family men who would drop everything going on in their own lives to be there for their grandchildren. And growing up, like most grandpas, they would tell me stories about their younger years. And you know, like most young grandchildren, I would usually find those stories quite boring. But as I got a little bit older, I started to relate my grandpa's stories to my own life experience. You know, they would tell stories about their first girlfriend, their first job, adventures they had, things like that. And their stories became fun to listen to. Unfortunately, Grandpa Ray passed away a few years ago, but towards the end of his life, he seemed to reflect a lot and was really full of stories about what he got up to in his younger years. He didn't seem to have any regrets or goals or dreams that he didn't achieve. And that suggests that he had a really full and great life. And to be honest, I think he did. But this makes me think a little bit. If our grandparents do have hopes and dreams that they haven't achieved yet, how would we know about that? Our grandparents always talk about the past, but how often do they talk to us about the future or their future? It's kind of like, I feel like we have to achieve our dreams before we get old. or they disappear. But it's like our dreams have an expiry date, like a bottle of milk. You know, when we get to a certain age, when we get old, if you haven't achieved your dreams, sorry, it's too late. You have to forget about them. But is that really true? I don't know. So one afternoon last year, I was having a cup of tea with my grandpa Alan in his living room, and it took me a little bit by surprise when he said, "Do you know, Matt, one thing I've always wanted to do since I was a younger lad is to see the Northern Lights." And for me, you know, I'm quite an ambitious traveller. I think if you want to go somewhere, just go. So without really thinking this over, I said, okay, well, if you want to do it, let's do it. I don't think my grandpa was expecting this answer. You know, I think he thought I would say, oh, okay, that's nice, Grandpa, yeah. I don't think he thought I would say, okay, let's go and do it. And I could see the cogs turning in his head as he thought about all of the reasons why we can't do it, why it's too difficult. You know, he's too old, the insurance will be too expensive, he has to look after my grandma. In fact, we call our grandma Mama. It's quite a common British thing. It feels very strange for me to say grandma, so I'm going to call her Mama. So my grandpa was thinking about all of these reasons why we can't do it, it's too difficult. But I told him, you know, if you really want to see the Northern Lights, let's do it, we can do that. You know, Grandpa has supported me in my travel dreams throughout my life as I've travelled across the world. Sometimes he worries his head off about me, but he always supports what I want to do. So there's no way that I was going to let his old age and an expensive insurance bill stop him from achieving his travel dream. Now that he told me about it, we have to have a go and try to do it. So after this, me and my brother, with a lot of help from my mum and our aunties, we started working on a plan to make Grandpa's bucket list dream of seeing the Northern Lights a reality. And I would be lying if I said that this was an easy trip to plan. The insurance definitely was a pain to sort out. And it was difficult to find a time that me, my brother and my grandpa were all available. We also had to buy Grandpa a new wardrobe, you know, a lot of new clothes. It can be cold in the UK, but it's not as cold as the Arctic. So we had to buy new trousers, new coat, new hat, new gloves, everything for Grandpa. But to cut a long story short, we did it. We made the plan. And on the 6th of January this year, 2023, at about 5:30 in the morning, I watched Grandpa get onto the plane at Manchester Airport, and we were heading to Reykjavik in Iceland. So we were on our way to try to achieve Grandpa's bucket list dream of seeing the Northern Lights, and we were going to Reykjavik in Iceland. But would we be successful? Would we achieve Grandpa Alan's dream of seeing the Northern Lights? Okay, as always, well done for making it this far. So before we listened to the recording, I asked you two questions, and they were, how did I describe my two grandpas? And secondly, what is my Grandpa Alan's bucket list dream? So firstly, I described my Grandpa Ray as a no-nonsense, straight-talking man's man with a great sense of humour, who lived for his sports. He loved football, but also cricket, horse riding as well. So that was my first grandpa, Grandpa Ray. And on my mum's side, Grandpa Alan is sensitive, caring, quite a deep thinker, loves nature, enjoys gardening, fishing, bird watching, and also loves sports as well. I mentioned that my two grandpas had different personalities, but they were both 100% committed family men. Okay, so hopefully you got some of that information and detail, and we'll talk about some of that vocabulary a little bit more in a moment. As for the second question, what was Grandpa Alan's bucket list dream? It was to see the Northern Lights. To see the Northern Lights. Okay, there are some really good phrases in here, very natural ones, but some quite difficult ones. So let's go back into the recording and look at those now. Okay, so at the beginning of the recording, I said that it often seems when babies are born, grandparents' hopes and dreams for themselves go out the window, and they put all their energy into taking care of their grandchildren, helping their grandchildren achieve their dreams. Okay, so when babies are born, grandparents' hopes and dreams for themselves go out the window. I love this phrase, it's a really good one. When something goes out the window, it totally disappears, it's totally cancelled. Okay, we can often use this with a plan. So for example, I planned to go to the beach at the weekend, but it rained a lot, so my plan went out the window. Okay, I totally cancelled the plan. So when something goes out the window, it's totally disappeared, it's totally cancelled. Okay, I continued then talking about grandparents and grandchildren. I said, as grandchildren, we only know our grandparents as old people who live their lives at our service. They're there to take care of us until we grow up, and then the tables turn. Okay, so grandparents are there to take care of us until we grow up, and then the tables turn. So what I mean here is, when we're young, grandparents take care of us, but when we're older and grandparents become very old, we take care of them. So the tables turn, okay? We change jobs, we change situations. You can use this phrase, the tables turn, to express exactly that. You change position or you change situation with somebody. Okay, moving on, I described my two grandpas, and I described Grandpa Ray as a no-nonsense, straight-talking man's man. Okay, a no-nonsense, straight-talking man's man. Often we have these two, let's say, adjectives together. So no-nonsense, straight-talking. If somebody is no-nonsense and straight-talking, it means they are not afraid to express their opinions, even if that might upset somebody. Okay, no-nonsense and straight-talking. They're not afraid to upset somebody with their opinion. I'm trying to think of a famous person who is no-nonsense and straight-talking, and often no-nonsense, straight-talking people can really divide opinion, right? Some people love them, but because they're not afraid to upset people, some people also hate them. So I think maybe Donald Trump is an example of a no-nonsense, straight-talking person as well. Okay, no-nonsense, straight-talking person. And I also mentioned that Grandpa Ray had a great sense of humour. Okay, a great sense of humour. I think a lot of people might know this one. If you have a sense of humour, it means you have an ability to find things funny, but also an ability to be funny as well. So if somebody has a great sense of humour, it means they laugh at funny things and they can make funny jokes. The opposite of that, we could say somebody has a bad sense of humour. Okay, so maybe the jokes they make are not funny. They have a bad sense of humour. Okay, so I continued to describe my two grandpas, and then I talked about how grandpas like to tell stories. And I mentioned that Grandpa Ray passed away a few years ago, but towards the end of his life he reflected a lot, and he was telling me a lot of stories about what he got up to in his younger years. Okay, he told me a lot of stories about what he got up to in his younger years. Now this phrase is a really natural one definitely for British speakers, British English speakers. I don't know about Americans, maybe they use it too. So get up to, okay, get up to literally means to do something, okay, what you did. But sometimes we use it in a way that means something a little bit naughty, okay, something bad. Not really bad, but maybe, you know, his stories with a girlfriend or doing something naughty but not too serious. Okay, so he told me stories about what he got up to in his younger years, so the things he did in his younger years. We can use the phrase get up to ask people maybe what they did at the weekend. So we could say, what did you get up to at the weekend? This is very, very common, a really common way to, and a really natural way to ask somebody what they were doing at the weekend. So what did you get up to at the weekend? Okay, so get up to, it just means, what did you do? Okay, moving on then. So I talked about Grandpa's stories and how we don't really know if our grandpas still have dreams that they haven't finished. I mentioned that it's like dreams have an expiry date, like a bottle of milk. Okay, when we reach old age, if we haven't achieved our dreams, it's too late. We have to forget about them. But that's not true. So I said that grandpas and grandparents don't really tell us about the dreams that they still have for their lives. So when I was sitting with Grandpa Alan last year having a cup of tea in his living room, it took me a little by surprise when he told me about his bucket list dream of seeing the Northern Lights. So it took me a little by surprise. Okay, so when something takes you by surprise, you're not expecting it. Okay, you're not ready for that. So when my grandpa told me about his bucket list dream, it took me a little by surprise. I was not expecting him to say that. I wasn't ready for it. Maybe another example, we could say I was driving down the road at night and suddenly a deer ran in front of my car and it took me by surprise. Okay, I wasn't ready for that. Took me by surprise. So what was Grandpa's bucket list dream then? Well, he said to me on that day, do you know, Matt, one thing I've always wanted to do since I was a lad is to see the Northern Lights. Okay, one thing I've always wanted to do since I was a lad is to see the Northern Lights. What is a lad? What is a lad? A lad is just a boy, okay, usually a young boy. And I think this is a very British thing. Again, I'm not sure if they use this. I don't think they use this in America, maybe in Australia. But a lad is a young boy. It's a slang word for a young boy. Okay, so it's normally used by boys as well. So maybe girls won't use this so often. But you could say, I'm going out with the lads at the weekend. Okay, and the lads refers to your group of friends who are boys. Okay. So Grandpa mentioned that since he was a lad, he had wanted to see the Northern Lights. And as I'm quite ambitious with my traveling, I didn't really think it over. And I said, okay, well, let's do it then. Okay, so I didn't really think it over. Okay, think it over means to consider, usually for some time as well. So when we think something over, we spend some time to consider it. Okay, so I didn't think it over. So I didn't spend any time to consider, and I just said, okay, let's do it then. We could use this phrase, for example, maybe you have a job interview and they like you and they say, we want to give you the job. This is the salary. Maybe you would say, okay, thank you for the offer. I need some time to think it over before I make my decision. Okay, so I need some time to consider. Okay, and I didn't think it over, but my grandpa did. So I mentioned that I don't think he was expecting me to say, okay, let's do it. So I could see the cogs turning in his head. Okay, I could see the cogs turning in his head as he thought about all the reasons why it's too difficult to go, why we can't go. Okay, here's a difficult phrase here. I can see the cogs turning in his head. Firstly, what is a cog? Okay, a cog is a part of a machine. You know, sometimes in a very old school, old-fashioned machine, you see those little kind of circles and one of them turns, and when it turns, it makes something move, okay? And usually they join together. These circles join together and they make something in the machine move. Okay, so these are cogs. These are cogs. And cogs will turn to make the machine work, right? So in this phrase, we are comparing the brain to a machine, Okay, so we're saying we can see the cogs turning in your head. It means we can see your brain working. And you know, when somebody is thinking, you can see it in their face, right? Maybe their eyes look up to the sky and they don't really look at you in the face. Maybe they tilt their head to the side or they scratch their head. Okay, so for my grandpa, I could see the cogs turning in his head as he thought about all the reasons why it would be too difficult to go. So I could see his brain, from his facial expression, I could see that his brain was working and he was thinking. Okay, I could see the cogs turning. Okay, yeah, and you know, Grandpa thought of a lot of reasons why we couldn't go. It might be too expensive, he has to look after my mama, but I assured him that if we wanted to go, we could do it, we could make it work. As I said in the recording, Grandpa's supported me as I've followed my travelling dreams across the world, although he often worries his head off about me. Okay, so he's supported me a lot with my travelling, but he often worries his head off about me. Here's a great phrase, I love this one, okay, worry your head off, worry your head off. Okay, to worry your head off, it means to worry a lot. Okay, worry like crazy, let's say. Worry your head off. We also use this phrase with laugh. Laugh your head off. Okay, so somebody tells you a funny joke and you laugh your head off. It's like to laugh uncontrollably. Let's say worry your head off, worry uncontrollably. Okay, so Grandpa supports me with my travel dreams, but he worries his head off sometimes. Okay, so we decided that we could do it. It would be difficult, but we could do it. And I mentioned that it was not an easy trip to plan. Firstly, the insurance was a pain to sort out. Okay, the insurance was a pain to sort out. Did it really hurt me? Was it painful? No, it wasn't, but it was complicated, troublesome, and difficult. Okay, so when something is a pain, it's troublesome, it's difficult, it's annoying. Okay? We could say maybe on a Sunday morning when you're very, very tired, loud children are a pain. They're annoying. So something is a pain, it's troublesome, it's annoying, it's difficult. So the insurance was a pain to sort out for Grandpa. There were a lot of things to sort out, a lot of things to plan, but to cut a long story short, we did it. Okay, to cut a long story short, we did it. You might have heard this phrase before. So to cut a long story short, it means there's a lot of information, a lot of detail, but you're going to skip that. You're not going to talk about it, and you're going to just give the final point. Okay, so to cut a long story short, I'm not going to tell you all the information, but I'm just going to tell you the final result. Okay, so to cut a long story short, we did it. We got the insurance, we bought the clothes, we organised the trip, and finally on the 6th of January, we were on our way from Manchester Airport. Okay guys, well done if you made it this far. I think there's some great phrases in there today, some really natural ones. I like some of these, but they're also quite difficult. So make sure you check out the blog and you read these phrases in context as well. Thanks so much for listening. So on the next podcast, I'll be talking about the trip to Iceland. So were we successful in achieving Grandpa's bucket list dream? Thanks so much, and I really look forward to speaking about that one next time.